Hi folks, I thought we'd talk a little bit about romance, a subject that I haven't tackled before on my channel. I'm 41 and I'm single, and I'm very happy with my life as it is, and I'm not doing anything actively to change it. And I've been that way for quite some time. But I also recognize that there are people my age who are single and who are very depressed about that. So I kind of just want to talk about why I feel the way I do about romance and sex. Growing up, I definitely had issues with feeling attractive. I was an overweight kid, and I didn't shift the weight until I was about 16. And the reason I went on a diet was because I wanted to have a chance with this particular girl that I liked. So I got out on my bicycle every day and I cut out all lunches. And within a couple of months, the weight had dropped right off me. And I wasn't obese, but I was the sort of guy who was very much carrying noticeable extra weight, and I got called fatso for it. So anyway, I got rid of the weight. People started complimenting me. I didn't get the girl, but that's just teenage life. You move on, But I didn't have my first major romance until I was in my mid-20s. And I fell head over heels in love with somebody. And for a couple of months it was great, and it seemed that she felt the same. We were both Christians, so the sexual passion was there, but we were both trying to do what was right by God. So we kept that in check. But that was one of those relationships. She ended it, and it devastated me for about a year because I thought I'd found the love of my life. I was in love in that very spiritual sense that you turn it almost into a kind of a magical experience. I feel very differently today about the whole idea of being in love. But we'll get to that. After that experience, I did chase girls a bit. Nothing worked out. And then I think when I was about 27, there was just some kind of internal change that made me think, this is not worth it. Forget it. And I kind of thought within myself, well, if somebody ends up being interested in me, that's fair enough, but I'm not going to do anything to pursue girls. It's just too much hard work, too tough on the ego. You've really got to lay it out there. When you ask a girl out, you're steeling yourself for rejection. It's an awful experience, really, when you think about it. So I got a couple of knockbacks, and something within me just went, you know what, forget it. Just forget it. I got better things to do with my time. Most of my life, you see, I had been single. So I'm not like the sort of person who always has to feel like they're in a relationship or something's not right. Mostly all I had ever known was not being in a romantic relationship. Having a girlfriend was the exception, not the rule. So I was quite comfortable just being me on my own with my predominantly male friends. So this situation carried on. I didn't do anything, it just carried on. And I started to realize, well, I'm getting a bit older here, and if I don't do something, I could end up being an old man and on my own. And that bothered me for a while. And then it suddenly clicked. I'm a relatively young man, well, young coming on towards middle age, youngish, man on my own, and I'm happy on my own. So what's the problem with being an old man on my own? Assuming I still have my health, wouldn't that be just the same? Of course it would. There's nothing depressing about being on your own. If you've adjusted to it, I guess it could be harder for somebody who's been in lots and lots of relationships, but I can't speak for what that's like. I can only speak for me, being happy on my own. So, again, I mean, I got into a relationship there about, must be nearly 3 years ago now, and it lasted for a year. And in that relationship, I was the heartbreaker, and the woman I was with, was completely devoted to me, head over heels in love with me. But I was a very different person than the person I was when I was in my mid-20s in that other relationship. You know, a psychologist could maybe look at me, or a psychiatrist, and could say, yes, Darryl, you say you're happy on your own, and that's what you say to compensate for the fact that you're not with somebody. Well, I had the perfect chance with that recent relationship to be with somebody, and there was much to like about this person, but for the life of me, I could not adjust to it. I could not bring myself to need her as much as she needed me. And you know, when someone says, I love you, back when I was 25, you know, when my girlfriend said she loved me, that was like, oh, you know, that was like it really touched you. But nowadays it's more like, I love you is as much selfish as it is selfless, because it's a way of also saying, I own you. You're mine. I love you. You're mine. And if I said I love you back, well, I'm saying the same thing. I own you. It's kind of a vampiric thing where we emotionally depend on each other. In fact, I would go as far as saying that this romantic love thing, it's almost like saying, you're responsible for my happiness. Because think of eventually I broke the relationship off, and I knew, I was going to break her heart, and I did, and I didn't enjoy that at all. But there was no other way to do it, because I knew I couldn't be the thing she wanted me to be. I knew I couldn't get to the same emotional place that she was in, because I was not the person that she wanted me to be. And I realized about myself that I really am satisfied as a single guy. And I don't see romance and love, romantic love, with the same kind of eyes that I saw it as a teenager or in my mid-20s. I don't see it like that at all. I see through the magic of it. It's not a mystical thing. It's biology. You know, when you really think about what we are as creatures, this whole organism is optimized basically to survive and to propagate its own kind. So the whole romance thing is really your brain's way of getting you to copulate with a female, to bond with that female, so that you'll be around when the kids that that female pops out, you'll be around to raise them. You know, that's what it is. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't buy into the magic of it, because we're actually supposed to. But when you see through it, it does actually allow you to live life with other priorities, where you realize by doing something else with your life, you're not actually missing out on anything. You're actually creating the space to have other experiences that might be denied to you were you doing the whole marriage and parenting thing. And you know, that thing about the mystical, if you're convinced by the whole mystical side of being in love, you've got to realize, you know, that doesn't last. Look at the divorce statistics. Almost all of those relationships started out with passionate love. But you get used to everything. Everything in life you get used to. And what was once a source of joy just becomes something mundane. I mean, I remember I've been in the job that I'm in now for about 14 years, and I like my job. But before I was in this job, I was in a different job where it wasn't terrible, but it was a frustrating job and I didn't like it a lot. And when I got this new job, I was over the moon. And literally for the first couple of years in my present job, I didn't even have a thought about the weekend. It could be Friday and I wouldn't have cared whether it was Monday or Friday. Oh, it's Saturday is tomorrow. Oh, big deal. I wouldn't give a single thought about the weekend. I just loved my job. Now, the job hasn't really changed. It's the same job. But I do think about the weekend more often now, because you get used to it. You get used to the job. And you just can't maintain that level of excitement about anything in life. You know, have you ever had the experience where you've taken one of your favourite movies and you've watched it so often that you can't watch it anymore without... I did that with The Shawshank Redemption. I used to love The Shawshank Redemption, and I haven't watched it in years now, but I don't have any motivation to put it on, even though for a long time it was one of my favourite movies. Have you got a song that you like? Have you ever overplayed it to the point where it just wasn't fun anymore? Love is the same. After a while, a kind of fatigue sets in. It's not spiritual. It's not mystical. So, and this actually touches on another subject that's very, very relevant to this. The whole idea of the search for happiness, the search for a lasting, fulfilling happiness. I think people sometimes want to find that in another person, but it's not to be found there. You know the old phrase, money doesn't make you happy? Well, that's true, it doesn't. The same is true of, you know, your job will never make you happy. Your partner will never make you happy. Not in that permanent sense where you get to hold on to something forever. You get the fairy tale, the happily ever after. We're not built for that. Every high that you have in your life just turns into something that you get used to in the end. And you know, when you make someone responsible for your happiness, when you say, you're what makes me happy, that's quite a responsibility to put on another person. And I felt that, you know, when someone says I love you to me, it's like, that's putting a responsibility onto me that I knew I couldn't handle, that I knew I didn't have the wherewithal to handle, without turning myself into an actor who would become everything that I was expected to become. I couldn't do that. It wasn't fair on the person I was with. It wasn't fair on me either. So I'm not looking for anybody. It's one of those things, again, if it happens, it happens. But if it doesn't, that's fine too. And I actually think it's probably not going to happen for me. I'm not closed off to it, but I'm not looking for it. I think there are real major problems with even the whole idea of men and women and how they relate to each other. If you look at your life, if you're a man, I bet you have predominantly male friends. If you're a woman, chances are you have predominantly female friends. The only men that I have seen that do it the other way are men who are effeminate or gay, where they have predominantly female friends. You see, it has to do with the wiring. Men are wired like other men, so they understand other men, and they know how to have interesting, productive, meaningful relationships with other men. Women, similarly with women. I don't know what it's like in your workplace at lunchtimes, if there's some kind of staff room, but in ours, the men are all down one end and the women are all down the other. And you're allowed to sit anywhere, but this is where everybody chooses to sit. You know, we relate to men, women relate to women. So this whole idea of, you know, the man and the woman get together and it just clicks. Women don't understand men, and men don't really understand women. You might say I have very limited experience of it, but I think I have enough. You know, we're fueled by testosterone. Women are fueled by estrogen. We're different. We don't even look at life the same way, really. So I don't get this idea of men and women getting together to be the absolute best of friends. I just don't see that happening. I'm not saying it's impossible. Actually, I have had a few good relationships with females, but in all cases, they were the sort of relationship where sex was off the table from the beginning, either because the person was already in a committed relationship and we were both moral enough to realize you just don't cheat, or because the age difference was too significant that it would have been inappropriate. You know, I've known some excellent females, and when our lives went separate ways, I missed them. But when the sexual component is a part of the relationship, that honestly seems to nearly inject a poison into it, where it becomes more about getting what you want from the other person, placing all kinds of expectations on that other person. It just doesn't seem to work. And marriage, you know, I understand marriage from the point of view of children, from the point of view of they require stability. I mean, when I was growing up, I was glad that I had a mother and a father in a committed relationship. I know not every child has that luxury. And there was one occasion when it was threatened, when I heard my dad threaten divorce, and it terrified me at the time. So yes, I understand it didn't happen, thankfully. But, you know, kids growing up with a mum and a dad is the ideal that you want. And it makes sense then that the parents would be married, or at least committed. But the whole idea of marriage as this till death do us part thing, that doesn't make any sense to me, because I don't know who I'm going to be in 20 years. You don't know who you're going to be in 20 years. How can we say we're going to be the same people, we're going to feel the same way in 20 years? And even if we don't feel the same way, we have to stay together because we've made the commitment. 10 years ago, I was a committed Christian. Imagine I was married to a Christian girl who was just as committed, only I went my way, which was to exit from Christianity. And she continued on that path. We could be in some serious domestic strife today. You never can tell. You see, the thing to always remember is that life is change. It doesn't make any sense to make any kind of a lifelong commitment to anything or anyone. Because, your kids are going to be grown up someday. And what we find in some cases is that when kids are grown up, parents, now in their 50s or whatever, they divorce. That's one of the things that sometimes happens. All I know is there are really high divorce statistics. And when divorce happens when the children are young, the current legal system hits the man very hard, typically, where there can be really exorbitant demands made upon him financially and restrictions placed upon him about access to his own children. It's frightening, actually, when you look into that a bit. Marriage is a very, very scary thing to me. I don't think I could ever choose it. Now, you might think I'm being overly defeatist, but when I'm happy as I am, when I've learned to find my own happiness inside myself, not in external things, not in turning people into property, when I've found that within, why would I ever choose to marry? Even if I met the girl of my dreams and we really hit it off, I would not be intending to marry her. And if she was insistent upon it, then that would be a real problem. Because relationships, see, I love friendships. Friendships can be really deep and meaningful. But if you suddenly find out that the person is going to be employed 200 miles away or whatever, or 400 miles away, and you have to say goodbye, you miss that person. But you don't go, "Why are you leaving me?" That doesn't happen. Because friendships, you don't cling to people in the same way that you do with romances. And I'm lucky enough in that I have a handful, very small handful, of deep and meaningful friendships in my life. And that's enough for me. I wouldn't like to be alienated from the human race. That wouldn't be pleasant. But I cherish my friends. And I just don't have any real inclination towards romance. I'm not asexual. I'm as red-blooded as any middle-aged man. And I really don't, I'll just admit it, I don't have a sex life because I don't chase women. One of the ironic things is, I've gone through most of my life feeling unattractive. And since starting the YouTube channel, there have been a few women who have been interested in me. So it's kind of weird that, and it's nice, it's nice that they are, but it's just weird that, I've gone through most of my life feeling ugly, and then I'm now middle-aged and it starts to come together. So, life, it's a funny thing, but yeah, so I don't know if there's any real wisdom in all of this or not, but I kind of just wanted to let people see what makes me tick. I guess really, if I'm trying to make anything rub off on other people, it's just that if you're alone, if you're outside of a romantic relationship, don't be sad. Look upon it as an opportunity. Because, the thing you're looking for, the thing you're trying to find through romance isn't found there. It's found within. Somebody made a comment recently about happiness that I thought was quite poignant. Said, happiness is wanting what you have. Being satisfied with what you have. It's not a thing that you can find. In fact, dissatisfaction is built into life. Because if you weren't dissatisfied, you'd have no motivation to do anything. To be completely satisfied is to be inert, with a big smile on your face like this. I'm happy, just as I am. I don't need to do anything. Now, that wouldn't be very well, it might be very pleasant, but life was not meant to be, I was going to say a drug-induced high. No, life was not meant to be on a high without drugs, if you know what I mean. It's meant to have its ups and downs. It's meant to have moments of happiness and moments of unhappiness. It's all built into the package. So, certainly look for those moments of happiness, but don't make the mistake of thinking that there's some kind of permanent thing to be found. Because that's only going to add to your suffering, because you'll never find it. It doesn't exist. So don't look for it in money, don't look for it in possessions, wealth, job satisfaction, or people. Find it within. Take care, folks.